back. In the previous videos of related to Azure Data Factory, we have seen the basics of the pipeline and the data set. So what is the relationship between that? Basically, more predominantly, we have seen the pipeline and the activities. So like related to data set and link service and integration runtime, we have not seen in detail in the previous video. So the agenda of this video is to understand the relationship between pipeline, data set, link service, and also integration runtime for that matter. And we'll also know a few details about dataset and link service also in detail in this video. So if you're new to this channel, please like subscribe and share with colleagues and friends who are interested to learn about Azure or any data engineering concepts. So in that case, it will be helpful for them actually, right? So let's get started. So as you mentioned, as we've already mentioned, like in this, the main agenda is we will know the relationship between the basic components of Azure. As we have already seen in the previous video, the pipeline, dataset, link service, and integration runtime. These are the basic components that will create a particular pipelines in the Azure Data Factory. So how these are related? So that is the main agenda what we will be seeing in this video. Okay. So now let's get to the important slide where we'll be able to clearly understand how these are related actually. So before proceeding to this actual relation, let us understand something related to dataset and link service. So in the previous video, we have already seen in detail how do we create a pipeline, what are different activities we see. Like one pipeline can have a number of activities. So this portion we have already covered in the previous video. You can in detail, you can go and check the previous video in the same playlist. But let us understand something related to dataset and link service in this particular slide first. Basically the definitions of these two, right? So data set, as mentioned, is a named view of a data that simply points or reference the data you want to use in your activity as an input and output data set. So this is by the definition as per the Microsoft documentation. But if you want to understand the like in a layman language, what data set means is, so data set in the data set you're actually defining a data structure. What I would say, suppose you want to copy a data from say SQL Server to a blob storage, or from the blob storage to an Oracle database, from anywhere to anywhere, right? So basically, you need to define a structure. What kind of data you are actually? I mean, you are transferring from source to sink. Suppose your source might be a CSV file, and your sink might be you want to like a target system, right, where you want to write it. So it might be Parquet file format or Aura file format. So that you have to define somewhere, right? So like you have to define saying that pick this CSV file from source and put it into a target system as Parquet. So this is where you define a data structure. What is the format of the file? How the file format should be, and what is the file name? What is the folder locations? All those will go in the data set. Okay, activity itself will not do this. Okay, activity will actually execute it, but all these data structure informations, right? Like as you can see here, example, there might be a table, there might be a file, there might be a folder. Okay, and there might be a file format, right? So all these details that will be defined in dataset. So that you can see in the demo in detail. I'll be able to show you that. But that is where you define those details in the dataset, right? And so now the final question is, so you have a data structure where you're defining all these elements, and you have activity which you can like which says whether it is store procedure, lookup, copy activity, or hive activity, whatever activities are there, right? Like as you see, it might be data transformation, data ingestion, whatever activity you are using, right? But the final question here is, what actually create a connection? Okay, there should be some physical connection going to connect to the source system or target system, right? So if you are using any programming language, you use a JDBC connector, ODBC connector, or any kind of authentication mechanism you will be using, like OAuth, right? But in this Azure Data Factory, like the authentication or the connection details will happen in the link services. So as the definition go here, link service is a connection is like a connection string in any programming language, if you talk for that matter, right? Which define the connection information. So the connection information can be anything, right? So it can be a, like a username, simple username, password, or it can be like say like you are doing the Active Directory authentication. There you just will just give the Active Directory name, and it authenticates using single sign-on mechanism. Or you might use so like a service principal name, that is in Azure there is something called a service principal name. So where it is like a service account, right? So you can use that also. And there is something called as managed identity. So you can use managed identity also to create a link service. So similarly, there are different authentication mechanisms. So so using any authentication mechanism, so that connection information should be stored somewhere. So that will be stored in the link service. Okay. So hope this theoretical part is clear. So now let us jump to the practical of it. So coming to the demo part. So in the previous video, we have seen the Azure pipeline. How do we create a pipeline, and what are the different activities like I can see here, right? But in this video, we will see like we'll start with the data set. So what exactly a data set? I mean, how do you create a data set, and what are the different options you see in it when we are creating a data set, right? So as you can see, I've already created few data set, but I want to show you if you want to create a new data set, you can click on here and go to new data set, or you can just click on plus symbol here and you can go for data set. So either of the ways, it takes you to the same thing. So when I create a data set, what happens? So definitely when I create a data set, it will ask me to create a link service first, because if you switch back to the slide that we were discussing, right? So data set will not exist, I mean, without a link service. Okay, it should be there, like data set should have a link service. So that is the reason. So it is asking us to create a link service first. Okay, so link service is nothing but where you want to connect. So whether you want to connect to Oracle database, whether you want to connect to Amazon S3 bucket. Okay, and just let me give you a pause here. Okay, and let me show you what kind of connectors that Azure provides. So as you can see, when you click on link service here, so like we are coming to the same screen as we see it there, but these are all the connectors like Azure Data Factory is capable of connecting. Okay, you can see like name any database, it is there, and you can name Spark, you can name Snowflake, Databricks, SharePoint, all kind of databases, SAP related. There are multiple connectors. Okay, so there is a REST API we can do, and Hadoop related like on-premise, like if you want any connector for like HDFS. So and there is Oracle, like different connectors are there. So you can just go through. I mean, we cannot mention each and every like connector here because it's like very huge list. Okay, and if you see like these are like main Azure Blob Storage, CosmoDB, Data Lake, Gen 1, Gen 2. So these are Azure related services basically, right? So basically, and you can also like just like this is just all, and you can just filter by category also. Okay, these are all the category. I mean, what we want to say is these are all the categories these are all the connectors that is available. So I would say like you can almost connect to any kind of a database, any kind of source, right? So using Azure Data Factory, right? And now like there are two options, right? Like when you want to create a data set, it will force you to create a link service. Okay, or what you can do is you can create a link service directly. First you can create a link service and then link that link service to your data set. Like suppose I have done the same thing here. If I go to this data set, right? This is my data set. What I'm doing is I'm linking to the existing link service. This link service is already created here. Okay, I will show you how do you create a link service, but hope you have understood this option where you can directly create a data set, and during that time only it will ask you to create a link service. Okay, suppose I want to create like a blob storage, right? Link service on the blob storage, and the next what it will ask is definitely the format, data structure, what I was mentioning, right? So data set is mentioned mainly for that purpose. So if you are mentioning it as a source, you need to mention what format of data is that, so that it can in the background it will write a code to read that or pass that particular file format, right? So since I've given the blob storage, it is asking me the file format. If I choose say like example Amazon S3, okay, it will ask the same thing because these are all the file sources. And if I ask like if I give the Cosmos DB, so then it will ask me the different details like table details and schema detail and all. Similarly, I want to show you one more, like say example, some SQL source, right? Or yeah, let me search for some SQL source. Okay, if I search SQL source again, it'll ask me like it'll definitely ask me the table name and the schema name in the next screen. So that is where it actually differs. Okay, like where I mean what you want to create, so that based on that your option will change. Okay, so let me create a data sample data set for you. So suppose if I want to create a data set on a particular blob storage, which is a target system for me. I want to store my data into a target system, that is my blob storage. So and what is the format that I want to store? So I want to store it in a say JSON format. I'll just continue and let it be a JSON. Okay, and then so as you can see here it is asking me to create a new link service or use existing link service. Here it will only list the link service which are of type blob. So if you see there is another link service I have created for SQL server, that is not getting listed here because the data set and the link service are interlinked. Okay, so there is option I can use the same blob storage like link service, that is connection, or I can create a new link service for that. Okay, so once I say I use the same thing, okay, and I just click on OK. So then you can see this data set is already created. And you can see you can give the container name, and inside, because we have given a blob, so definitely we need to give a blob container here, and then directory name. Directory is optional, but container and container is actually mandatory, and file name is also optional. File name, if you're not giving it, so it will create a file name with a like some table name or something like that. Yeah. So also you can browse it. So if you browse it, will take you to that particular container in the blob storage. Okay. So this is about the creating the data set. So now we will go to the one step deep, that is creating a link service. So link service, I'll just show you the existing link service. So considering I want to show you a demo, like where I want to copy the data from SQL database table to the blob storage. Okay, SQL database table will be in the tabular format. I'll copy a table from a SQL database and store it into a blob storage as a file of type CSV. So now, like I have to establish a connection, right? There should be some connector connecting to this, okay, where I'll store my credentials. So just coming back here, you can see. So as you can see, link services will store the credential, okay, or the connection details basically. So coming back, so SQL database, if I want to connect, right? So these are the details it will ask. It will ask what is the authentication mechanism. So based on the authentication mechanism, it will ask you the details. If I choose like service principal, it will ask another service principal related details. So now I'm just using a SQL authentication, and then you can just give a username password here. And it is always recommended to use a keyword, Azure keyword, and store your password in the keyword. But just for a demo purpose, I'm showing this this way actually. And you can basically test connection once you create a link service here. So as you can see, the connection is successful with the username and password. So basically, I'll just show you, this is my database which I've just connected. So where I'm connecting to this database, particular testDB 2022 DB, I'm able to connect, which is a source. And I want to copy this table, which is customer V2. Okay, so this table is having around maybe around 9 rows. So I want to copy these 9 rows to the blob storage. So what is my blob storage? So blob storage is this is my blob. Okay, test db, the data is my blob, and this is a container. Test container is the container inside that. And as you can see, this container is currently empty. Okay, so to read the data from this table and write into this container. Okay, so I need the data factory should connect to both your SQL DB and your container. So that is happening in the link service. So SQL DB I've already shown you. And coming to the blob storage, so again, when you choose the blob storage, it will ask you multiple authentication mechanism, maybe account key, SAS, service principal, and so on. So I'm using one of the authentication mechanism, whereas it is mentioning is account key, right? So account key, you can get it somewhere from here, there is access, like if you go to the container here, and you can see here access keys, and here you can go and create your own keys, and that keys will show up here. So and that keys you can copy and you can place it here again. So it's always recommended to use keyword to store these details. Okay, and yeah, I mean you can just use any authentication mechanism. So basically what we have done is, so we are able to connect to the SQL database, and we are able to establish connection to the blob storage. So after establishing a connection, so just one step back. So once you establish a connection, I have to tell what format I want to store the data into your blob storage. So this is my blob storage, right? And the file should come and land here. So what is the file format? Is it a CSV file format? Is it a Parquet file format? So where do you define that? Okay, if you can recall, that will be defined in your data set, right? So here, if you see, it shows related also. Related is nothing but which all the data set are using it. So directly you can click on here and go there. But I want to just go back and show you here, where this is a delimited text. So as you can see, this is a data set which we have created of CSV file format. That means the file which is going to go and come and land here will be of a CSV format. If I want to create a Parquet file format, so what I am supposed to do, just create a new data set, right? And just so what is your link service type? It is a link service blob storage, right? And here you have to choose a Parquet file format, right? Previously I have choose CSV. That's the reason it's showing CSV. That's the only difference. Hope this is understood. And as you can see, there are multiple options when you choose inside dataset also. Like now, as of now, I have kept the default values, but you can choose instead of comma. Since it is a CSV, it is by default comma, but you can choose any other delimiters. You can choose row delimiters also. And if you want, like there are a couple of options. I don't want to go in all the details, but just showing you the bigger picture of it. And if you want to keep the like first row as a header in the data, so that you can use it here. And schema also, you can just import schema and do a lot of things on this, but out of this video we are just not explaining because of the out of scope in this video. So that is where we call it as a data set, right? So, and coming to this is of what type? This data set we know, which is the target is CSV, and this data type is of what? This data type is of SQL type. That means we want to connect to a SQL DB and get the data. That is also SQL DB. So hope now it is clear, right? So coming back to this and just we will try to like join the dots. Like we have created a link service for both the SQL Server and blob storage, right? And we are able to establish a connection. And also we have created a data set for both your source, that is SQL DB, and target, which is the blob storage. That means we have created a link service for both source and target, data set for both source and target. Now we will come back to the activity. So this piece is complete, right? Now we will come to the activity. So in the activity, we can use Hive, stored procedure, copy activity. So now we will use copy activity. We can use stored procedure also. That will be connecting to your stored procedure will only work on your SQL or any kind of databases, right? So that is obvious. So now our intention is to copy data from source to sink, right? That means transfer to target. That is why we are using a copy activity. Let us see how do we do that in the pipeline. So this is my pipeline. Okay, I'm simply I'm using a copy activity here. And this copy activity, as you can see, I'm having a source and sink. That means source data set I have to link here, and in this tab I need to link the sink data set. So since I've already created a data set, I can just link those data sets here. Okay, so if I want to take a new copy activity, let me show you a new copy activity and show you that. So it will be asking you the source and sink data set. Source will be like this one, and sink will be like blob storage, delimited text. So that's what I have already done here. Okay. So now, so source and sink, after giving these details, what we have to, I mean, if you want to do a mapping, so this we will show in the upcoming advanced videos, but I want to don't want to cover or confuse you at this point. But copy activity, just a plain source sink. Let us concentrate on these two, where we are just mentioning source dataset and link service, sink dataset. So now, if I just kind of debug it, okay, as you mentioned, there are two types, debug and trigger. You can see in the previous video that we have explained that. But you can use any of the options, but just to show you, I'm using a debug option where it will take some time now. It has failed for some reason. Let me check. Okay, let me kind of discard if I've made any changes. Okay, so coming back, so this is the source dataset and sync dataset. I'm just trying to run it. So before that, if you see our container, blob container is empty, right? It doesn't have anything. So we are expecting a file which is of a CSV file format. So now this is running. You can just click on this particular tab. I mean, if there is an error, you can click here and it will show what is the error here in detail. And if this is an input actually, where you can see what is the input that is going to this copy activity, and you can also see what is the output which is coming out of it. So now, as you can see, data rate is zero, data return is like zero, and all those things. So now I'm getting some error. So let me kind of check what is this and sort this error out. This is because of some firewall configuration. So whenever there is a firewall configuration, we need to whitelist that IP. I'm doing that for a SQL DB. What you can do is when there is a connection issues, right? You can also like now I have added the IP, whitelisted the IP. So now let me try to kind of test connection here. So whether if it's successful, yeah, you can see it is successful. So now if I run it, it should be able to work because the successful is, I mean, the connection is already tested now. So sometimes it will be queued. Okay, you can see there's now different status here. First it will be queued, and next it will start in progress, and then it can fail or it can success. Basically, these are the four states. And you can keep on refreshing. Again, it has failed. Basically, sometimes if you are having a dynamic IP machine, so your IP will be keep on changing. So that time you will face such errors for whitelisting IPs. So again, I have whitelisted my IP. Let me see. So now I'm trying to debug. So meanwhile, you can also preview data if you click here, right? If your connection is successful, you will be able to preview the data. So this is the SQL DB data that we are trying to copy, right? So the same data which I'm showing in the database. So you can preview the data here. And same has to go and land into a blob storage as a CSV file format. So now you can see it is completed and it shows success. And if you can click on this basically a specs kind of symbol, so that you are seeing here. So it will be able to show you how many data is read and how many data is written. So this will not be always same because the file format will change. I mean, if you're using say like CSV file format, it might be less. If you're using some say JSON format, the data written might be more than data read. So that depends on the file format. Nothing to much worry about that. But you need to just verify how many rows are read and how many rows are written. So that is quite important to just match it. And you can see there's one file written. Okay, because you're reading a table and you're writing into one file. So where is that file written? Definitely to the blob container. Let us see. Just refresh it. You can able to see that customer file and click on the customer.csv. And if you want to just see the data, I can just click on edit. It will show you the same data which is there in your table. So that has been copied in the format of CSV. So hope this is clear, like how it is actually working. And as I was mentioning, right, in the output also you can see a lot of details in the JSON format. So as we know, everything is JSON in our data factory, right? So you can see like a lot of details are there. This is a metadata details basically. You can go all these details and understand. Like there's a throughput, copy duration, copy rows copied, rows read. So there are a lot of details basically. These are all, we call it as a metadata, and basically we can use it for auditing purpose. We can store this, we can read this also and store it in some audit table just for auditing purpose. So yeah, so this is where we have seen the bigger picture, what we have explained at the beginning, right? We have seen a pipeline, and inside pipeline we have seen an activity. So in our case, the activity is copy activity. So the pipeline is this one, and inside pipeline we have copy activity, and that activity is having a data set. Okay, so that activity is having a data set, like two data sets we are using, source and sync. There might be one data set or two data set. If you're using copy, then definitely you will have two, right? One is source and sync. If you're using a stored procedure, then you will have only say one data set. You need only one data set. So, and finally, data set will be linked to your link service. That is what, right? If you go to data set, click on open, and then if you click again here, you can see here, this is a link service. You can click on edit, it will take you to the link service. That is how they are getting connected, linked. So pipeline, activity, data set, and then link service. Finally, the activity will run on your link service using run on. Run on in the sense, your particular copy activity will run on your connection, that is SQL server, or it will run on your blob storage, basically, right? So dataset is just a structure that we are defining, and the file format, folder location. So keep in that mind. So this is very important to know the distinct role of each components here. So what is doing what pipeline is doing, what activity is doing, what data set is used for, and what link service is used for. So this has been explained in detail in this video and the previous video. So if you are having any doubts, I recommend you to watch these two videos again so that you'll get more clear. So this concept is very important. If you understand this, upcoming videos, I would say it will be quite easy, and I would recommend you to practice this. Okay, and we have also have a video in the Azure series where we have mentioned how to create a free account, Azure account for the practice purpose, so that you can create your blob storage, you can create your SQL server, and do all this practice and with the data factory. And hope the agenda, what we have set in the initial of the slide, is clear now. And thanks for watching.